All right. So I wanted to watch this because this is something that kind of goes under the radar, and it's something I wasn't hyper aware of. But some of you guys might have. You guys generally know a lot more about this kind of stuff than I do. But this is why are right-wing accounts obsessed with this random TikTok video, and it's by a smaller content creator named Jason Pargin, 27.9K subscribers. And I'm going to put. I've already watched this video because I was very interested in this. So this is one of the ones that I will react to after watching with you guys. So I will say you should probably subscribe and like this guy's stuff because I do think it's pretty good. So this video is going to explain something that I think is very important about what we see in the shooters, whether it was the ICE shooter, whether or not it was a Charlie Kirk shooter or Thomas Crooks, or even all the school shootings, and why this is really important for parents to actively engage in what their children are engaged in and know what's going on for them. So this is a video called Why Are Right-Wing Accounts Obsessed with This Random TikTok Video?
If you don't know what's going on in this image, you probably should. It is just an embedded video with this woman who some of you recognize with the caption, "Tariffs or this?" Tariffs. Here's another post embedding the same video saying, "Is this the longhouse?" If that word is nonsense to you, and it will be to most of you, one, I envy you, but
I knew what a longhouse was, but I did not understand the significance of what it was used for. So this is pretty important.
two, you are kind of out of the loop on something that is happening behind the scenes. The clip these guys are embedding is a video that was posted almost a year ago of some women doing a TikTok trend.
Gen Z boss enemy.
And that video has been in...
Okay, and very important, a year ago. So what was going on a year ago? Kamala Harris was running for president.
Absolute obsession among right-wing anti-feminist accounts online. When Elon Musk came off...
And read that tweet. So read the tweet that this is embedded on. While everyone is up in arms about the H-1B thing, aren't you glad Kamala didn't win the election, though? Because if she did, these women would be the only ones getting managerial jobs anywhere. Now, first of all, very easy to point out that, of course, that's not true. Once again, any type of exaggeration with DEI specifically comes from fear, anger, and hatred. It's just, these are all things that are fed to these people constantly. They live on the knife's edge of, being obsolete, which is ridiculous. It's crazy. If anything is going to make you obsolete, it's going to be AI, and these people are all for AI, which is fucking insane. But this is what these are all men. These men believed were going to happen if Kamala Harris were to become the president of the United States. They believed that women were going to take over. That might be a good thing. They were going to take over and that men were going to be considered obsolete.
Started making his cuts in the government. They posted this video saying, yes, finally, it will...
I believe he's an author, Jeremy. I believe he wrote a book called In the End, John Dies, I think is what it is.
Put a stop to this. When Donald Trump announced his tariffs on every country in the world, they said, yes, finally, he's fighting back against this. He's fighting back against the longhouse. If you don't understand this, you are not going to understand how young men are going to be voting for the next few decades. I had to do a whole bunch of reading on the subject because I wrote a book in which a character is immersed in these beliefs. The belief among these extremely online men's rights types is that our old system of masculine values has been replaced with what they call the longhouse. It is a proverbial communal house where everyone has lost their privacy in exchange for comfort, and that in such spaces it is women who make the rules, and so everything about the culture and how disputes are resolved is all done the feminine way.
And this is something that I actually was going to talk about on stream the other day, and I don't think I had a chance to. And this is kind of the irony of men talking so much about masculinity and talking so much about how younger men nowadays are more feminine and how younger men, are disconnected. A big part of that is because for a large portion of our society's reality or being around, its existence, is we said men go to work and women raise the children. So most of these men that are decrying young men being more feminine are not taking accountability for the fact that they didn't want to be a part of those young men's lives. So like with my son, you guys heard me talk about it on here. Fancher Death has had me also watch a video on here for Big Think that was really good, where we talked about legitimate young men problems, issues in society. And I do believe that young men do need more attention. But you also need to accept that the reason that these young men didn't have attention from masculine figures was because we were telling women they're the parent. They stay home, they take care of the kids, we go to work, you're the parent. You raise these children. And then you wonder why they have less of a affinity for masculinity. And so that's one part of it. And I don't even think that's a bad thing, by the way. I think that young men should have both the impression of the masculine father, or even a feminine father, and from their mother as well. Like, you should get both. My point is that parents need to be paying attention to their fucking children. And that's really, really hard nowadays, because when you have both parents not only working 2 full-time jobs, but oftentimes monetizing their hobbies or taking on a second job as well to be able to just pay for the rent or just pay for food and electricity and stuff, that leaves very little time for them to have any type of leisure time and being able to parent. Now, of course, from my point of view, if you have to make a decision between having leisure time and having time to parent your children, you obviously should be spending that time parenting your children. But there is something to be said about the fact that when people have no time for leisure, they're not really mentally healthy people. So when we have young men that are this hyper fixated on the fact that they're afraid that if women become powerful, that will some way delegitimize their ability to participate in society, and it will knock them out of their hierarchy, right? What we're really actually saying is that these women have taken over, that these women are just waiting, just chomping at the bit to turn all of the young men into ultra feminine slaves of their wants and needs. And that's ridiculous. I don't know about you guys, but most of the women in my life are actually just really good people that attempt to help me be a better person by giving me advice. I wish that one of them would be the president of the United States. It would actually be great, because I've been a much better person because of that. So what we've done is we've sold young men this idea that if women come into power, that they'll be replaced by women. And that's just not true. In every relationship in society, it's best when both sides, male and female, or male and male, or female and female, whatever it is, of any relationship are equal. That we know that. Any relationship that is successful generally has 2 people, even in relationships that have gender roles. So even in relationships where a woman does stay home and the man goes to work, or vice versa, when those people are equal in their ability to speak in the relationship as to what the relationship is going to be, that is when you have the most success. So once again, we have to be the logical side of this argument and say to young men, you're not being replaced. We don't want you to be replaced. We want you to feel good too. We want you to also be a part of the society. But we're not going to stop helping women. We're going to continue to help women, and we're going to help you too. So this longhouse theory is the idea that women are replacing young men and are going to become their slave masters, pretty much.
So the theory goes, in such spaces, it is women who make the rules. And so everything about the culture and how disputes are resolved is all done the feminine way. So the theory goes is that the way men resolve disputes is through direct confrontation or even physical violence. But
yeah, and that's the fear that's being sold to them, right? And that's a legit fear. So for most of you know, like, I'm a big fan of Steven Pinker. Steven Pinker oftentimes can be his beliefs can be exaggerated. He's a very feminine man too. It's amazing to me that people like get the things he say so wrong. Like, people consider him to be like a eugenics guy and all this shit, and he's not. And if you do think that, then you should do more research on Steven Pinker and stop just watching the shit that people have fucking spoon-fed to you. There are biological differences in the sizes of brains between a man and a woman. And for the most part, for women, it's actually fucking better. Women tend to focus more in studies on things like relationships, on emotional empathy, emotional intelligence. Men tend to specifically concentrate more on things. Now, that's not 100% across the board. It's just saying that on average, these things are true, right? So when you have here, let me go back. I lost my thought. I also saw that I got a $5.
Direct confrontation or even physical.
Yeah. So when you have young men that are in some way feeling as though their like intuitive way that they deal with things is by being aggressive, confrontational, and physical. And then what you have on the other side of that is you have women that oftentimes tend to do things psychologically, not physically. That scares the fuck out of young men. And so what we need to be able to do is to say to young men, you have to have respect for women. You have to have a belief that they should be treated well. So that way you engender a relationship where that person doesn't want to backbite. That person doesn't want to attack you psychologically. And you want to come to a place where you both can use the things that you're good at to help each other be successful. And instead of doing that, what the right is doing right now is they're saying women are going to go behind your back. Women are going to use psychological warfare against you. They're going to turn your friends against you. They're going to turn your family against you. They're going to do all these things that are going to fuck with you in this way that you're not equipped to defend against. And that's not true. Because even though I agree with the fact that there are biological differences in the size of different parts of the brain, men versus women, it doesn't mean that you can't learn to be better at those things. And that is also provable. And what we're doing right now is we're selling fear instead of selling hope, right? We need to be saying to young men, and I'm not saying we, I'm saying the right. We need to be saying to young men that yes, you might not always understand why a person does things in a certain way, but that doesn't always mean that it's a bad thing. That means that they do things differently than you, and you should learn why they do those things that way, and you should also, if they're doing it in a bad way, you should learn how to counter that. Yeah, not all of us. Of course, not all of us. Nothing I ever say is all of us. This is why I keep saying you can't afford to ignore incels, make them an ally, or face the consequences when they can vote to get even. $5. Thank you, Fenter Death. Yeah, that's 100% true. I'm hearing that AG would like to be dominated by his wife harder. True. True. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that. Nothing is ever always true. And this is what drives me nuts about these conversations. Because I'll say, so on average, women are better at pattern seeking. And people will say, not all women. No shit. No shit. It's as though human beings happen to have all these like fucking intermixing of genetics from their parents and their parents and their parents' parents, their parents' that do end up, when I'm saying something, generally, specifically speaking about something that's sociological or neurological or genetic, almost all of it has something to do with on average. But the way that we operate as human beings is by sussing out what is something that happens the most often and then applying it to a situation and then changing our tactics depending on how that works with that. So I love having these conversations, but I also hate having these conversations because it almost always ends up getting twisted. I like Jonathan Haidt and I like Steven Pinker, and a lot of people will call both of those people out for certain things that they say, and sometimes they're wrong. There's certain things that Jonathan Haidt says that I completely disagree with, but a lot of what he says actually makes a lot of sense. So I think that this is one of those places that this is a very, very complicated issue, and we have to be much better at talking about it in a way that is both sensical and also where we can disagree on things as long as they're not crossing certain lines, like eugenics, where you would say, oh, black people are automatically bad at these things because they're just black, or women are automatically bad at these things because they're women, or they'll never be successful at something because they're men. Like, we want to always be careful about like how we talk about those things, because on average doesn't mean always true. So, but at the same time, we need to have these conversations.
Physical violence, that women enforce rules through things like social.
Jin says, these young men to face reality that they ain't got no game. Their dialogue and behavior is repulsive. These young men need to listen when an OG says, shit, son, learn to spit game. So that's the problem, though, Jin. A lot of the problems is that a lot of white men can't jump. That's true. On average, Skelts, white men cannot jump. Yeah, so that's the problem. My problem, Jin, is I think the older generation tends to shit on younger men when the older generation is the reason that young men exist in the manner that they do. That's not, once again, always true. But as a parent, I know that one of the most important things to me is to stay interactive with both my son and my daughter to make sure that they are always supported and there's always somebody around that they can come to anytime that they don't have something or an answer to something that is a problem in their life, right? So if my son comes to me and he says, I want to have a girlfriend, but I have a hard time approaching women, then I'm going to do my best to talk to him about how to do that. Now, in my opinion, the best way to form relationships with women is to form relationships with women that aren't necessarily a girlfriend or a wife. Like, make friends with women. You should learn the things about women that makes them tick. You should learn the things about specific women that you are interested in that make them tick. Does she like somebody that likes to cook? Learn to cook, motherfucker. But there's a balance to that. You can't let people wallow in self-pity. So you have to support them when necessary, but you also have to let people fail. And people, when they fail, also need to learn that failure is not the end of your story. It is a part of your story. So I agree with what you're saying, but I also disagree a little bit with whose fault that is. I don't know that specifically I put all the blame on young men. I would put the majority of the blame on parents, on specifically male role models, people that like Andrew Tate, guys that have grifted off of young men and used their loneliness to make money, but also, like I said, parents that aren't interactive with their children as well.
Isolation and reputational harm, gossip and rumors. They may not inflict physical violence,
Jim.
but they will cut you off from resources and your social network, so you still feel physical harms from it. And in modern corporate environments, compliance officers and HR reps are mostly women. So the reason they had this incredibly visceral response to this Gen Z boss anonymity TikTok dance is that they believe this is the oppressor class. This is related to that. If you have Netflix, you've probably seen them heavily promoting a show called Adolescence. The plot is that a 13-year-old boy is accused of killing a girl in his class, and then I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that they quickly find out that he had kind of fallen down a rabbit hole of these right-wing influencers.
Yep.
He perceives...
So that's what I'm saying. If you don't raise your children, the internet will. And no parent wants to take accountability for the horrible things that their children do, right? Like almost always, you're going to hear the parent say, we spent a lot of time. Like, you never hear the parent of one of these shooters or the parents of one of these people say, man, I fucked up. Like, I'm the reason that my kid was like this. No, there's a lot of dodging of accountability, and that's even understandable because that's almost like a mechanism to, continue to be able to live life, because obviously the responsibility of your child doing something like a school shooting would be so fucking horrendously heavy that you probably would not want to be in this world anymore. But one of the main things that continues to be shown in every one of these school shooters, or the killer of Charlie Kirk, or the shooter Thomas Crooks, every one of them has something very similar, and it's something that continues to go untalked about because we're so concentrated on left versus right and all that bullshit, is that a lot of these young men are not political. They're not political. Because just because they happen to have right-wing conservative values does not mean that they give a shit at all about politicians. When the little bit of information that we have about Thomas Crooks showed that he was a registered Republican, but that he was apolitical in the fact that he had actually not registered to vote, or a registered vote, but had not voted. And when they looked at who he had researched as to who he wanted to take out, he had researched people across the political spectrum. once again, it's people that are reaching out for some type of relevance in a society that they feel they have no connection to. Charlie Kirk's, the guy who took Charlie Kirk's life, you look at all of the stuff to do with all the video games, the Discord, if you believe all that stuff. Like I said, there's still a lot of questions surrounding all of that shit and what we can take at face value to be true. But if it is true, if the things, let's just say the things are true, then there is a connection there that these young men, once again, are nihilistic. They are nihilistic. And that's also happening to young women. Young people in general have been pretty much told they have zero future, and they've even been shown it. Climate change is real, and it is affecting them. The job market and the fact that jobs don't exist for these people are only getting worse because we're including AI, and we have never came up with any type of UBI or anything else to take care of these kids if there's no job for them. The parents are overworked and spend no time with their children anymore because if they take 5 minutes to themselves, then they can't pay their rent. There's a lot of factors that go into the creation of the nihilistic youth, and I think that this is something that nobody wants to talk about because they want to politicize whether the person is left or right. And the real problem that we're having here is that young people in general feel disenfranchised from this society and have no hope or care to want to make things better. And that's how we end up with people that have no emotional intelligence, that can't discern why they shouldn't do the things like this young man in this show does.
That this female classmate of his had humiliated him online. She was going into the comments of his...
Yeah, actually, Petrazi just said something that's very important, and I haven't talked about this on this show, so I think that it's really important that you guys should know about this, and that that this young man, once again, just like these people, ran over these two girls. One that he had been stalking, apparently. There's very little information about this as far as I know so far. But once again, video game guy, streaming. No, video games do not increase the chance of violence in young men. No, it does not. There's fucking no information, no evidence. But people that are nihilistic, people that are done with society, do tend to play video games. So video games may not make you more violent, but the fact that a person spends more of their time doing nothing but playing video games is an indicator that the person is becoming nihilistic, which could lead to violence. So once again, these are very nuanced conversations. This is the type of conversation I prefer to have. This is the shit I like talking about. So that young man, 17-year-old man, ran over two women, and one of the reasons that he claimed that he did was because she had made fun of Charlie Kirk. That once again, we'll have to see what the evidence comes out, but I guarantee you he fits the same bill as the rest of these young men. I guarantee you it.
Instagram posts. So there's that dynamic that he perceives that she is attacking him in the feminine way by going behind his back and attacking his reputation, but then he struck back in the masculine way with physical force. But there's another layer to this that they were sure to include and is incredibly important. In the show, the father of the accused killer had a successful business doing manual labor. He's a plumber, and he was a former athlete. He was a big masculine dude.
And does that not sound familiar? Like, this is something that's going on in the society. So you have fathers, right, that grew up with very abusive fathers, if not just abusive parents in general, that believe, like, how many times have you heard this? If that kid would have got his ass spanked, he wouldn't have done that. Bullshit. I was abused as a child. It didn't make me a better person. It made me better at hiding the things that I did wrong. That makes me a worse person. Abuse does not beget better children. The way that you have better children is by having a relationship with those children where they know that you support them and that they can come to you for advice and that you'll always help them when necessary. That is how you create a well-rounded, healthy child, not through abuse. This is something that is really a fucking problem in this society, is that this is where actual toxic masculinity is real. And that is when you have a father that becomes abusive, either verbally or physically, because he thinks you're not man enough. My son is a beautiful human being. He's on the spectrum. He's an Aspie. He's a martial artist. He does cross country. He does a lot of really cool things that I'm into as well. But at no point would I ever think of him as being the most masculine of children. He's not a guy. His jokes are pretty goofy. He's a goofy kid. I fucking love him for who he is. I don't need him to be a rah, physically aggressive, mean person. And I don't think that will get him anywhere in society. I think that what he's doing and the way he is as a human being is best for him because that's who he is. And I want to support that. And one of the problems on the right that we have right now is that you have all these parents, these fathers, that are embarrassed that their kid isn't as mean, as strong, as aggressive as they think they are, because they're not either, by the way. They're just also abused children that grew up with this facade of being this tough guy, and they're not these tough guys. I grew up with tough people. I know what they look like, and they don't look like these people.
His son is not equipped to do
What up, Manny?
any of that stuff. So the son perceives correctly that the father has always been embarrassed by him. So throughout the show, you have these completely baffled parents saying, this kid had no criminal record, no history of getting in trouble.
Sound familiar?
He was never abused. He has no psychological problems. We raised him in a comfortable home, in a nice neighborhood, at a nice school. How did this happen? Because they could not grasp that for some men and boys, if they perceive that they are being looked down on and humiliated, they would burn the world down to make that go away.
Yep.
And the theory is that his anxiety and depression is tied to a loss of masculinity across generations. Thus, the belief that we need the tariffs to bring back this kind of work. And those of you out there who have read my totally unrelated...
Yeah, so that's actually a solid point on his part. And once again, you got to remember, because people will watch this shit and they'll go like, oh, he's just making excuses for these young men. You got to stop. You got to take 2 seconds for yourself to step back from the anger and use critical thinking. Use the logic that you possess, especially as a left-wing person. One of the reasons I really like being on the left is because so many people are very good thinkers. It's just sometimes they think themselves in a corner through emotion, through passion, and they get stuck. What he's saying there about, right here, let's just go back. Let him say it again. About the tariffs.
That his anxiety and depression is tied to a loss of masculinity across generations. Thus, the belief that we need the tariffs to bring back this kind of work.
So if you see what he's saying there, is tariffs equate industry, at least in these people's minds, right? So bringing back car factory jobs, that's masculinity. Being a plumber, masculinity. All of these things, right? And there's a lot to be talked about why none of that is right? But it's what these young men are being sold. So this is why I said take a step back. Don't let yourself get so passionate that you freak out and you're just making excuses for young men to be assholes. Nobody's doing that. Nobody wants that. I have a daughter. I want her to be treated respectfully. I don't want her to end up being harmed. I want young men to be healthy. That's what I want. You have to understand the reason he's saying that is because he's saying this is what these kids, these young men are being sold. The only way that you're going to learn to be a man, the only way that you're going to earn the respect that you believe you deserve, both from women and other men, is by doing these obscenely masculine things. So you have to have the car industry come back. You have to have plumbing come back. You gotta be out there and you gotta be building houses and fucking getting your hands in the dirt and you gotta be fighting people. And the way that you deal with that is by being a parent. Because when I talk to my son, I make sure he understands that whatever he does that helps him be a successful person is going to impress the people that he wants to impress. Because the people that he wants to impress or that will love him, that will give him back that appreciation, will be people that enjoy the things that he does. If I like football and all I talk about is football all the time, then my wife is, if it's a girl that doesn't like football, then she's not for me. That's the way it is. If I want to be a raw, tough guy, and I want to walk around and strut and be a badass, then I'm not going to attract women that want a man that's emotionally intelligent. This is a reality that can only be explained in one-on-one conversations between you and your children. And if you don't spend the time having conversations with your children, then you are going to find one day that you are going to greatly regret that you did not spend that time having those conversations with your children. Because one day they will grow up and they will do something. Hopefully it's not as horrific as what that kid does in that show, but they'll do something and you'll look at them and you go, that's not the way you were raised. And you're going to be fucking wrong because that was the way they were raised. You did that and you take no accountability for it. The older generation needs to fucking learn they are a part of the problem. And it doesn't mean that you have to just give up on life. You can still make it better.
And those of you out there who have read my totally unrelated book are saying, oh, that's exactly the same thing. That's Abbott and that's Hunter. That this pressure cooker of grievance that guys like him are in is the black box mentioned in the title. Because the premise is not that young men like this do not have any legitimate grievance with the world. Everybody has
it's
some
how they go
legitimate
about
grievances.
taking care of it. Yeah.
It's that when you spend 12 hours a day glued to a screen, having those grievances reinforced continually, you lose all sense of perspective. To the point that you can watch a goofy little video like this and see it as a sign of the apocalypse.
Itty bitty cheese in a bomb. Itty bitty cheese in a bomb.
And that's
all
it
right, guys.
there.
So if I'm being
Stop it,
honest,
Cal. That's it in a nutshell. Is that you have to take accountability for the fact that your kids are learning these things from, other teenagers on Discord or from fucking jackasses like Andrew Tate. And instead of just like hating those kids for being those people, instead you need to try to work with them and help them become better people. Like it's so important, man. And like I said, I don't hate my parents, right? They did. I was abused. I was abused mentally, physically, emotionally, sexually, like everything. My mom and both of my sisters were abused mentally, physically, sexually, emotionally, everything. It's a cycle. And if you're never going to be the person that says, oh, hold up, I don't want to see something that I love, something I created, something that I appreciate more than anything in this world ever. If you never say to yourself, I want to see them do well, and never understand that the reason that you have the things that are wrong with you in your life are because of the way that you were treated when you were a kid, then you're going to find yourself being greatly disappointed by your own actions at one point or another. And it's how you deal with that. Everybody deserves a path to redemption, except for certain people. Certain people definitely don't deserve it. But most people, most people deserve a path to redemption. But you have to want it. You have to be able to say to yourself, you have to be self-critical. You have to be analytical of your own behaviors. You have to say to yourself, maybe the reason my kid's a dick is because I was a dick to my kid. It's balance. Everything about life is balance. Everything about life is balance. You have to be able to say to your children, when you do something wrong, I will be there to tell you that you did it wrong, and if it deserves a punishment, then you will deal with that punishment. But when you deal with that punishment, do not ever forget that I will be there for you. I will support you. I want you to get better. I am not punishing you because I dislike you. I am punishing you because I want you to understand how important it is that you don't take this action. And then you need to realize that punishing children, that the punishment should fit the crime. It shouldn't, abuse is never okay. Physically abusing a child is never okay because it never fits the crime. It never does. There's nothing that your child can do to you that deserves you harming your child. It's best to incentivize children to want to do better than to punish them out of the behavior. So, and that flies in the face of what I just said about punishing your child because I used the wrong word. As Joy Reid said earlier, words do matter. You should incentivize your child by saying, as long as you do great, as long as you do good, as long as you follow my rules, I will make the world happen for you. That's how you raise good children. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, and check out that video on the screen now.